Okay, I'm going to work through a 1-2, 1-3, and 1-6 practice quiz. It comes from page 285, 19, 20, 23, 36, 37, and numbers 69 and 70, I think, would be the types I would ask on Monday's quiz. So, to solve these for y, instead of adding 3x squared, you might subtract 3x squared from both sides. That makes y equal a negative some sort of an x squared. I hope you're going to be aware that y equals x squared is a parabola opening up. Y equals negative x squared is a parabola opening down. X equals y squared is a parabola opening to the right. X equals negative y squared is a parabola opening to the left. Now, this is a y equals some sort of a negative x squared, which means it opens down, right? Draw a vertical line. At most, how many times would it touch it? If it hits it at most once, that is considered a function. Unlike this one, suppose you solve this thing for x. You would have to subtract y squared, subtract y squared. These would eliminate. You'd have 2x equals negative y squared plus 6. Opposite of multiplying by 2 is to divide by 2, which also means multiply by 1/2. And I think you'd get this. But in general, it's a form of x equals a negative y squared, which means it's a parabola opening to the left. If you do a vertical line here, it hits it 0 times. If you draw a vertical line right here, it might touch it 1 time. But if you draw it over here, it's going to hit it 2 times. If it hits it more than once, it is not a function. So this one is considered not a function. Okay, so we have 19 and 20. The next one's number 23. This is called a piecewise function where it's in pieces. I need to know this number right here, 13. Is that greater than 4 or is that less than 4? So where am I going to plug the 13 in? In the top. So I plug in into the top and I put in the 13. 13 minus 4 makes this a square root of 9, which is 3. Let's be as clear as I can. The square roots are positive. If it's an equation, is when you put positive and negative. Do you see any equals anywhere here? No, so this is not really an equation. Now, how about g of 0? Which one, where is 0? Is 0 greater than 4 or less than 4? 0, which is this number, I think is less than 4, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm going to use that function, 4 minus x, and what's the x I put in? 0. So I believe this one would equal g of 0 is 4. Okay, g of negative 3. Negative 3, is that what they have? Yeah. Where is negative 3? Bigger than 4 or less than 4? Less than 4, so I'm going to use the top or bottom one. I'm going to use the bottom, I think. Is that right? Yeah. So I put in a negative 3, and I end up with this answer being 7. It's not there, but I'm going to ask one because I know what happens on my quizzes. I'm going to make a part D, and I want to know g of 4. Where would I plug 4 in, the top or the bottom?
Maybe both.
Okay, I don't think it fits both.
Oh,
If I'm using the 4, if I'm looking at this 4, I think it's in this, right? The or equal part.
Oh, I thought there was a thing underneath the
The other one?
yeah.
It's only under the top one.
Oh, I didn't know that. Right.
So if I put the 4 in, I'm going to use which one, top or bottom? Top. And you're going to have x minus 4. But you're going to put what in for x, making this 0, right? There was no D, but I think it's a good question to actually ask one at the border where it changes. Okay, we'll move on to 36. They want to know whether this is even, odd, or neither. First off, what are all the powers of x's? Are they all even or odd? So I might test for oddness. To test whether the function is odd, you're going to replace x. Let me use a different color that's a little more visible. Let's do x replaced with negative x. And if I'm checking for odd, you also have to replace y with negative y. So what I'm going to do is check for odd by replacing the x's with negative x's and the y with a negative y. Negative y stays negative y. A negative to an odd is negative. Minus 5, actually, would that be a negative and a negative? Would that make this plus 5x? Plus 5x. Now, I don't care about negative y. I have to have y. So basically, we probably want to simply multiply both sides by negative 1. And I'd have y equals x cubed. I don't know why I wrote a y. That's an x. Minus 5x. Because that matches the original, this is considered an odd function. All the x's here are the even powers. Originally, this is y equals x to the 4th minus 2x squared plus 1. I see even powers, so to test for even, you just replace x with negative x. So any place I see an x, I'm going to put a negative x. So I'll put negative x and negative x. Now a negative to an even power is positive. Minus 2 comes down. What's a negative to an even power? Positive. Because this matches the original, 3 dots in this pattern means therefore. Therefore, it is an even function. Because I tested for even and it worked. It matched the original equation. I just did a couple extra lines here. Y equals 2 minus x. That's a neither because it doesn't. To be a even function, you have to fold it on the y-axis to match up, and that would not work. On the odds, you have to fold it on the x and the y-axis. And that one, this y equals x is an odd power. It happens to be an odd function. To test for odd, you're going to replace x with negative x and y with negative y. So I'm going to replace y with negative y, x with negative x, replace the x with negative x. We have negative y equals negative x. On the denominator, that becomes positive, right? I know people are a little bit algebraically weak because to get y, you multiply by negative 1, right? Yes? So am I multiplying by negative 1 on the right? Don't multiply top and bottom by negative because that doesn't make it negative. That's 2 negatives. So what would this become? Well, it's top times top. What would you get? X and bottom times bottom. Because that matches the original, this happens to be, I tested for odd, so this is an odd function. Okay, this is 37. Then the last 2 I gave you were translations or shifting, transformations of the graphs. I graphed y equals x squared as my original graph, correct? 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, negative 1 squared is 1, negative 2 squared is 4, 0 squared is 0. It's a parabola opening upward. Now, if the number is on the outside, like here, it'll shift it up or down. Because this is positive, it's going to shift it up too. So I take this point, I move it up 2. I take this point, I move it up 2. I take this point and move it up 2. I take this point and I move it up 2. This point goes up 2.
Are those other points there, or did you just make them?
Slow down 1 second. Okay, this is number 69 because it's basically just the x squared graph shifted up 2. Again, if the number is on the outside, not with the x, that's up and down. If it's like this and it's with the x, this one is going to shift left or right. So to tell which way, you make this equal 0. Is it positive or negative? So that means it's because it's negative, everything moves to the left 2. So I take this, move it to the left 2. I take this, move it to the left 2. I take this, move it to the left 2. And you basically have number 70 as a same shape, same size. There are arrowheads. It does continue. But it's just shifted to the left 2, whereas 69 was up 2. And I may make one other addendum here. So I made another example here. You make this center part equal 0. If it's positive, it moves to the right, so this moves to the right 1. And the number at the end tells you how far to move it up or down. Because it's positive, it's up, so it's moved up 2. So this one is, I don't know, this is 70A. I just made one up. So this is the 70 alternate one.